Hi, welcome to the Right Room with Hillary Phelps. Today, I'm thrilled to have Laura Cathcart Robbins in with us. And Laura is the author of Stash, My Life in Hiding, where she details living a life of privilege and prestige, being the PTA president while secretly hiding her Ambien addiction, and the ways and the things that she did to keep it active, and how she eventually got help. So I hope you'll come along with us today, listen to Laura's story. It was such a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Hi. Hi, Laura.
Hillary,
How are you?
girl, I am good. I am good. It is, it's a beautiful day here where I am in Los Angeles. I'm in the middle of revisions for my next book. It's, my honey's birthday today. I just, everything is whatever isn't going well, it doesn't matter because the big stuff is good.
I love that. That's a great perspective. And I feel like we had half of this conversation before we hit
Yes.
you play. I've been so excited to talk to you. I loved your book. And I was trying to remember how we got connected. I think it was on social
Yeah.
media, on Instagram, and like
Gartner.
What's that?
Okay, moving on. Sorry. Yes, we got connected on social media. I know you through Instagram.
That's how, yes. And I was like, I don't remember like how, if someone tagged you or I found you, but I was so grateful that I did. And I feel like you're one of the OGs on like sober OG Instagram, because you have 16 years.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, on the 14th of August, I will have 16 years.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you still remember what it was like when you were drinking? Can you feel, or when you were,
my goodness,
when you were in your addiction? I know you were Ambien, and we'll get into that.
Completely. Yeah. Every cell of my body remembers what it was like.
It's interesting because I thought, when I get further away from it, I won't remember what it was like. But if I close my eyes, I can tap into that feeling of exactly that shame and sadness and disconnectedness and loneliness really quickly.
And the discomfort. Yeah. So much discomfort for me during that time. So yeah, I'm the same. I can tap right into all of that you name.
And it's incredible. It's incredible and terrifying at the same time because it's such an impact. I mean, it was such an impact on our lives. I can't speak for you, but what we went surviving in the addiction, and then getting sober. And so I'd love to jump in. And first of all, I loved your book. We talked about the stash, My Life in Hiding. And I didn't know because I was drinking and drugs, but I had never experienced or knew anybody with an Ambien addiction. And reading your story was so raw, and I felt like I was there with you. And so your level of writing and just the ability to pull somebody into the story was so powerful. But if anybody hasn't read your book, can you talk about what that was like being in that?
Absolutely. And thank you for the kind words about the book. It is, it never gets old. I want to hear, but it's the thing that really doesn't get old is when people resonate with it. When I say something that feels or sounds like something you might have gone through or something someone might have gone through, and they're like, okay, it wasn't Ambien or it wasn't this, but I know that feeling. I know that desperation. I know that obsession. And I mean, I think those two words, desperation and obsession, really characterize the nature of my addiction, especially at the end. Ambien was a drug that was given to me. It was prescribed for me after my second son was born he was born in 99. I don't think it was prescribed for me until, I don't know, 2001 or 2. And I was, on the verge of a breakdown. I had two kids, under 2. They were 21 months apart, one born in 98, one born in 99. What they call spirited boys now. I don't know what I call them then. Right. But they just never stopped. They were like wind up toys. And, I joke that the middle name of my oldest one is No, no, wait, wait, because that's all I would ever say to him. No, no, wait, wait.
Yes.
Um, I was a very hands-on mom. It was really important to me to be available for my kids all the time, including, you know, everything, and then and then I couldn't sleep. And it wasn't like I couldn't sleep every once in a while, but it was pretty consistent. And like my nervous system was just shot. I was very aware of every pre-waking whimper. That meant I needed to get up. And even if they, kind of worked their way back into sleep, for me, my adrenaline started going as soon as I heard that on the monitor or, in the bassinet next to me, wherever it might have been. And yeah, I just, I didn't know how people did it. I was like, this can't be what motherhood's like. And I really thought that I was headed for something dramatically bad. And I wasn't sure what that was, but slowly I was isolating myself in my life. I was isolating myself from my then husband. I was isolating myself from my friends. Like all I had room for were these babies. And I was prescribed Ambien by my doctor to try to, reset my system. And, I'd never heard of it at that time. It wasn't a very popular drug back then. This was not 2008. That's the year I write about. This was way before that. And I took it that night. And Hillary, it was like manna from heaven. It was golden oil. I think that's how I describe it. Like from my head down into my body, like everything was velvet, everything was soft, everything was warm. It just did this thing to me. So it wasn't just that I got to sleep, I got to feel better than I had ever felt, and then went to sleep and felt good throughout my dreams through the night. Like I was still aware of that softness, that warmth, that everything, that squishy that it gave me. And I woke up feeling energized and happy and grateful to do it all over again. And so that's how I got started taking it. I didn't start abusing it until later. What happened was my tolerance built, and I needed more and more and more in order to get me not just asleep, but get me that feeling that I'm describing. And eventually that feeling was elusive and I didn't get it anymore, but I also couldn't sleep again. And it's called rebound insomnia when you abuse, usually benzos. Ambien's not a benzo, but it acted the same way in my body. And so I not only could I not sleep, but I was being chemically kept awake because I didn't have enough Ambien in my system or couldn't take enough to get back to that place.
I mean, what you just described is that complete addiction cycle, right? Like whether it's Ambien or alcohol or heroin or any of those things, it's like we're chasing that first high, that like feeling that we get. And it's like, I want more of that and I want to be there again. And you had experimented kind of with drugs and alcohol earlier in life, right? And so when you were when you were just talking about that too, about the boys, kind of waking up, what came to mind too is that like hypervigilance, because in childhood or growing up, you were also super kind of hypervigilant. Can you take us back there and talk about what that was like?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that because it ties directly into that. The way that I was when my kids were born, which is the way that I grew up. I had a stepfather, and it was really like just kind of everything that I was authentically rubbed him the wrong way. And he came into my life when I was 5 years old. He was a young guy. I look back on it now and think, because he was a man, but he was younger than my youngest child. Like when he came into my life, he was 24.
Oh.
And he was just not very nice to me, and he was violent. Not physically toward me, but I grew up in this violent home. The violence was usually directed toward my mother, and so when I would irritate him, then he would take it out on her. And so what I learned to do, one, was to, blend in, right? If I was targeted by him, things were rocky in my house. So I did what was required so that the house was quiet and my mom didn't get it. And also, if, that's, I could only control so much of that. Um, but in the evenings is when most of the violence happened. So I would lay awake at night listening for in like the beginnings of that violence so that I could, maybe jump in between them or, walk in and hopefully interrupt it. So I was always hypervigilant in that way. And, it would be, if you look at like rooms of people who deal with addiction or alcoholism, I started relatively late. It wasn't until like my latter teens. I didn't really like the taste of alcohol, honestly. I didn't quite get what it was about when all my 16-year-old peers were drinking.
Do people
Um,
like the taste of it?
yeah, people like the taste, and the effect was kind of like to me, and maybe I just didn't drink enough to
Yeah.
get the effect. We drank a lot of, like, we would get a 6-pack and like go up to a lookout point,
Yeah.
and I would get like one of them, and I just didn't like it, so I would kind of dump my beer. What I did like at age 19 was freebasing, which is a big jump from not
From
liking
beer.
anything.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and this was before crack cocaine became a
Yeah.
thing. Freebase is basically the same process. It's cooking cocaine down to a really pure form and then smoking it. But I grew up in the Bay Area, or the second half of my life was in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was discovered there. It was actually discovered at UC Berkeley. 2 scientists figured out a way to do this, and so it was not this kind of down and dirty drug. It was pretty glamorous. Like the parties that I went to when I was 19, someone would be cooking this up in the kitchen and they would be making drinks at the bar and someone would be also serving food. And you could take a hit of a pipe or you could get a drink or you could. And so that's how I was
It's full
introduced to
service.
it. And people in, the women were dressed really glamorously. Like it was pretty, elevated
Yeah.
comparatively to what the picture is that I think that people get, but it was still smoking coke, like bottom line. And I did that for about a year with there was a dealer that I found. The parties were at his house and he took an interest in me. And so I went there on the weekends and smoked and like all weekend. And then my parents kind of figured out what was happening and say like they were worried about me, which I was kind of scoffing at. Like I, it's not a problem, but of course it was a problem, but I didn't see it that way. So I just stopped. And then, in my 20s, I drank socially, but it wasn't a problem. So I really thought, I knew about alcoholism. I knew about addiction. I really didn't think that was me. When in my 30s, I had these kids and needed these pills, I thought, well, addicts don't just stop smoking cocaine. Addicts don't just take a drink every once in a while. That's not alcoholism. So I really didn't think it was me, but boy, I was blindsided, when it was.
And something I've said a lot is that, addiction isn't something that discriminates or picks and chooses. And something that you said that was profound, it's privilege is not protection.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's not privilege, because I grew up really poor. I was always like the only Black kid in my white schools. I was the only one on scholarship. That's what they called financial aid then. And when I say poor, I don't mean that we were destitute, but my mom shoplifted groceries occasionally. Like there were times where we really just didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And so I was not exposed to the type of life that I was exposed to later on in my life. But I liked it in magazines. Like when I was a kid, I would, go through, I don't know if Elle was around then, but like Harper's Bazaar and Vogue and dream about these really luxurious lifestyles and think if I had all that, my problems would be over. I wouldn't have any issues. And so when I ended up marrying somebody who was able to place me right in the center of the type of lifestyles that I'd only read about, I just assumed that there wouldn't be anything, like that was it. How could I not be the happiest, right? With all these things at my disposal, with the house, the private planes, the nannies, the housekeepers, the personal shoppers, like how could anybody not be happy there? And then I found myself, caught up circling the drain in this addiction in the middle of all that. And, I was miserable. And the truth was, Hillary, I was killing myself, even though I didn't, I didn't consciously want to die, but I was taking these lethal doses of pills and washing them down with booze on a nightly basis at the end. And, it was nothing protected me from that. There was nothing that could have protected me from that.
And it's something I said. It's like I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live when I was
Yeah.
so deep in my addiction, in the drinking and the drugs, and just that I just didn't want to exist anymore. And so I would try to find that numbness. And
Mm.
something I want to read to you, you might know what it is from the book, that you talk about the numbness.
Yes.
Is that numbness is different from oblivion. Oblivion is seductive and dreamy. It's that place you sink into while counting backwards from 10 while they put you under, the place heroin addicts chase. But every time I knock myself out with drugs and then snap back to consciousness, this terrible numbness is the first thing I feel. It's not that my body is numb, like during those Cambridge winters where I'd sit by the radiator after playing in the snow. This numb is an absence, a soul sickness. It's a thick plexiglass wall between me and everything else.
Oh, that's good writing.
It's great writing. I was
It's so cool to hear you read it.
this is one of the moments when I felt so connected. I cried, and I'd love to, like, because it's so well said. And there's so many times, I've read books like yours, and we talked about Laura, and
Yes.
where I'm like, you put words to what's happening inside my mind. And I think that's something powerful for me with meetings or 12-step community, is that people say things, I'm like, oh, that's how I feel. And you feel so connected just in that moment of hearing someone else describe your story and the words
Yeah.
out loud. But this is such a powerful paragraph.
Mm.
How does it feel to have it like read to you? I mean, what comes up for you when I read this to you? Because this was one of them. There's one other one that I'm going to read that I may probably cry, but this was one that really hit me.
Well, first of all, you're talking about like hearing these things at other sober support groups, right? We go in and we hear people sharing their experience, and we're like, oh my goodness, they put words to the thing that I'm feeling, and I didn't even know that I was feeling that until they said it. And there's a couple of those in there. Like I heard somebody share that it was like a plexiglass wall between them and everybody else. That's why I put that in my book, because I remember hearing that at a meeting and like my brain exploded, because of course it's like you can see out, people can see you, but no one can touch you, right? And you can't touch anyone else. And there was something else in there, that in that paragraph that I've borrowed from somebody else. Oblivion is the place that heroin addicts chase. That I heard someone share about that in a sober support group, and I was just like, oblivion is the place that I chased. I wanted oblivion. I didn't think about what oblivion was, but that's what I was looking for, not the numbness, but this other type of lightness, this other type of absence. And I didn't really make the distinction until I heard somebody say that. I also hear my editor, Michelle Herrera Mulligan, in that paragraph, because she's like, cold like what? Like, where did you feel that type of cold? And so I was like thinking back to Cambridge winters, sitting by the radiator. Like but she made me add that tidbit in there about not that type of cold. And I was thinking, I think that my reader understands what I'm talking about, that I don't really need to explain much. But I ended up explaining a lot more, because neither my agent or my editor understood a lot of what I was talking about. And I'm like, okay, well, then here we go. I'll add some explanation. But back to what you were saying. When I wrote that, I was in my journals. I had pulled all my journals out from that period of my life. I had also pulled out my Filofax, which was, for those of you who don't know, a day planner where I literally wrote in pen on paper what I was going to do that day, like a calendar. And I mean, it was a calendar. It wasn't like a calendar. But I also wrote notes in there. And I'm sitting there, on these days looking at what I navigated and looking at what I needed to do in order to navigate it. And it all came flooding back, like that numbness, that inability to even tell how I was feeling about something. And toward the end, I talked about I was chasing that high, but really toward the end of my using, all I wanted to do was feel. Like, I remember watching sad movies, like the saddest movies, the movies I was guaranteed to cry at and not being able to. And I was trying to produce this sorrow, something in myself that said that I was in touch with my feelings. Forget happy movies. I knew I wasn't going to be able to laugh, but I thought I could cry. And I couldn't do it for a really long time in that time period. It wasn't until after I got sober that I was able to both laugh and cry again, genuinely.
Did you have that experience of stuffing? Like, when they say, like, with drinking, we would drink over the feelings and they would stuff down, 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 down. And when I got sober, I remember the day when all of that came up and I was angry and I and I feel like, well, I'm a woman. I shouldn't have anger. I need to be contained. And I remember kicking over this trunk and like shattering this glass candle holder and being like, I don't think I was supposed to do that. But it was so hard to hold it in anymore. Did you have something similar like that?
I think, yes, but I think mine was not so much a moment. It was like I was yelling at my kids again because they weren't ready for school. And I was yelling at them, not just like, hey, come on, you guys. I was angry, which was out of character for me. And I wasn't familiar with this brand. And what I'm looking back now, I can see that it wasn't anger, it was rage. Anger is fine, but I was feeling these bursts of rage that I misdirected toward people 2 years into sobriety, 1 year into sobriety. And I would catch myself and be like, what's going on with me? And, my kids were shocked because they hadn't experienced that with me before. And then, it was the cycle of remorse that would come in, right? So I would like rage and remorse and rage and remorse. And it was really through doing the recommended work in the program that I'm in that really kind of helped. What's the word I'm looking for? It was to lessen it, basically, to kind of, if the rage was a bucket full of rage for me, then, every day it went down an inch.
You could
Every day
ladle it
I did
out.
this work. Yes. Ladle some out and pour it on the sidewalk. And I don't experience that rage anymore. I haven't since that period of time, but that really shocked me. I didn't know I had that in me.
It's such a beautiful, the program or would just say recovery in general, right? Is the beautiful ability to be able to, like my partner will say, at our core, we'll lie, cheat, and steal to get whatever we want. But by learning these tools and practices, then we can really become the person that we want to be, not the person that's like in us. And there's a part of that gives me hope for everybody.
Yes. Everybody should be in recovery of some kind. I just said it. I know I'm not supposed to say things like that, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to go to a sober support group, but everybody has something to recover from.
Yes.
So therefore everyone should be in recovery.
I co-sign that. So I agree with you. So I'm going to come behind you on that we shouldn't say that and say, like, you are so right. Like living, honestly, like owning our shit, right? Owning our mistakes, saying that it's a really beautiful way of living. But there's one thing that I do want to say too, which is when I read your book too, like the way you described yourself in the beginning, like how you lived, like a publicist and your Louboutin shoes, like you were who I wanted to be when I was drinking and like was not there. I was not cool enough to be So like I read this, the funny part is I read this and I was like, yes, like this is who I always wanted to be. And
Yeah.
then I read your recovery story and I was like, yes, this is who I want to be too, like friends, you know
Oh,
what I mean? And so
yeah.
what is it like for you to share so honestly and vulnerably? Because a lot of us in the recovery space and where we advocate for, addiction recovery and helping others, there's a level of vulnerability and authenticity, but you're oh, and I love that you cursed in the book, by the way. Like the raw honesty. I was like, yes. I like every time
My
I
inner
heard the talk.
voice.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that your inner voice was your out like in the book. I was like, yes. And so what is that like? I mean, because this is really there's a lot of feeling,
Yeah.
there's a lot of what you went through, there's a lot in here that's really raw and vulnerable. And how does that feel to write it and share it? And then how does it feel now that it's in the world? I know it's been in the world for a while. How does that
Mm.
feel to be
Yeah.
so authentic and vulnerable?
I think that, for me, sharing my story
Yeah.
was something I was very uncomfortable with at first and certainly not honest about. Um, but as it was actually pretty quickly, in the program that I'm in, you get to guide other people through the program.
Mhm.
And as I was celebrating 1 year, someone came up to me and asked if I would guide them through the program. And I was like, oh no, I don't know anything about this program. I'm not doing that. I'm only was here for a year. I'm about to get out of here. And they were very persistent. And it was through sitting down with this person and talking to them and really just sharing my story that I experienced this transformation in myself. And it wasn't like a one and done. It wasn't like I told a story and then I felt better. But as the process unfolded, as I continued to kind of mirror this person's experience with my own, it's like they would share something that they thought was the worst thing in the world. And I'll be like, girl, let me tell you, I was blah, 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 blah. And they'd be like, what? And it was helpful. It was really helpful for me to go through that process that way with them. And so it wasn't long after that that I got pretty comfortable sharing my story. But in kind of the confines of those rooms, like I shared it with my therapist, but that's,
Yeah.
a safe environment. No, it doesn't go
Right.
anywhere. And eventually I was just talking about it so much, I started talking about it outside of the rooms, not, you know, inadvertently, but when it
Yeah.
was appropriate.
Right.
And and so when I decided I was going to write, though, this was not the story I wanted to write. I had lots of other stories in mind. And I say that Stash was the book that demanded to be written because I kept trying to write other things that kind of included this period of my life, but didn't focus on it.
Okay.
And all of the agents that rejected me, kind of the ones who were kind enough actually to send me not a form letter, but an actual email, said, this is the meat of your story here. So I figured I'd try it, just try it and see. And I didn't think it was going to be the story, but I tried writing it. And it was so much fun to write, Hillary. Like I had the best time writing this book. I wrote it in 6 months. I started in November of 2020 and I finished it in April of 2021. And it was during the pandemic. We were shut down. So I literally got to write from 11 to 7 every single day, 5 days a week, not every day. And I had a ball. It was like I pulled out all that documentation that I had because I have all these sources, my journals. I listened to playlists from that year, just all the music that I listened to then. I put on TV shows from then so it would help jog my memory. And I just had the best time researching it and writing it and really interrogating my own memory and feelings. You know, meditation is a really big help for me. I do it every day. And while I was writing, it was really important for me to do it in earnest so that I could get in touch with those things. And I felt very grounded while I was writing it. And while I was getting the feedback from my agent and my editor, I was kind of like, huh, you don't understand why I needed to sneak in all my drugs to rehab? Like that wasn't, of course, I was going to sneak in everything I had. But I'll add that stuff in. And it was, I don't, there were there's some really vulnerable parts in the book that were absolutely, those were challenging days. And they stuck with me for a while because I had to relive them. I had to relive everything. I had to relive it. But I think what happened is I had enough distance from that, so I didn't re-traumatize myself in the writing of it. And I teach memoir, and I tell people, there's a section about writing about trauma. I give them my experience with it, and I'm like, if you can write it a day later without re-traumatizing yourself, be my guest. But just do that internal diagnostic and make sure you will not be harmed in the making of whatever this piece of art is that you want to make. And yeah, so that was what it was like writing it.
And you said you're working on a second.
I am,
I'll have
yes.
to share that.
Yeah. I'm in revisions on a second book right now.
If not, I'll edit it out.
Yeah, no, you are. I mean, it's not sold yet, so that's good. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about that second book. What? Let's do it. Tell me about it. Is it a continuation of this? Is it a totally different book?
It's a totally different book, and it actually goes back to that period where I was a publicist that you're talking about.
Okay.
It focuses in on that time of my life. So there's a big betrayal that happens then, and something that I didn't think I was going to survive. So it's really about that betrayal, but the other character in the book is the late 1990s, which is when it took place, and the fax machines and the Rolodexes and bike messengers and, pagers and like all that stuff. So, yeah.
I'm excited. I love your writing. I think it's really talented. Like I said, you could draw me in, and I couldn't. Like, I looked forward to going to bed at night so I could read it because I have a 7-year-old. And so as soon as I got him to bed is when I would read it. And I was like, I'm really tired, but this is really good. And so I enjoyed it. So I can't wait to the second one. And you also share, like, I'm kind of out of place, but when you went into rehab, we touched on this, the privilege, but I do want to talk about that external, right? Like looking good on the outside, because I've said that you look good on the outside and I was burning alive on the inside. But on the outside, you were the PTA president. And then later in the book, you describe as pulling a pill out of vomit.
Oh, yeah. One of my finer moments.
The dichotomy. No, I get it. I talk about wanting to suck up vodka off a street. Like there was a person in a meeting talking about a homeless person that said, and he was no longer homeless, but said this was all the money I had for vodka. And I dropped it on the sidewalk, and I was like, well, I can leave it or I can get a straw. And there was bird poop, and I was like, yeah, of course you get a straw. And I'm like, I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyone that has been there understands. But I would love you to talk to that about, because I think as women in addiction, we go through it, and women in general, we have this idea of as long as we look good on the outside and we can check these boxes of, I have clean clothes, my hair's, I have a haircut, my manicure, like all of these things, then people are going to think a certain way about me, and I'm okay with that. But on the inside, I'm burning alive.
Right.
Can you talk to that and kind of what the change was?
Thank you for bringing that up. It's so important. And it's one of the reasons that I hoped that my book would resonate with people who maybe weren't familiar with addiction, but understood the onus on women to present in a certain way, whatever that takes. It's like the Malcolm X of perfection, right? By any means necessary, you're going to look perfect out there because that's the expectation. And it's something that it's a very slippery slope for me still. That outside validation can allow me to feel like I'm doing well. And I what I know now and this far in recovery is I know to check the inside before I validate that I'm well. I know that I need to check the inside because it's not enough to have the hair and the facial and the clothes that match or go together. It's not the car that I drive. It's not any of that stuff. It is what's going on with me inside. And during that period of time, you know, I was lost. Like I was and I wasn't. Like I had an idea of what I could bring to the table, but the things that I thought I brought to the table weren't really my things. You know, like I am great at presenting well. I learned it in my house growing up, you know, showing up at the dinner table, using the appropriate utensils, like all the things that would make him think that I was okay. I know how to do that. And I don't I do it without thinking about it. You know, I don't do a check on myself and decide to do it. It's not a decision. It's just what I do. And you know, and I came into my marriage that way. I saw how things were done. I adopted these different ways of doing things that I hadn't grown up and weren't authentically me, but it didn't matter because it allowed me to blend in with the other families that I was around. It allowed me to blend in with the other moms, because that was really important to me. I didn't know how to be a mother. Like I I loved my kids, and I didn't have that period of time where they were born and it was difficult for me. And I know that a lot of women have that, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. But I loved them from the moment both of them were born. Like there was nothing else. I never felt anything like that in my life. I never felt that strong of a gravitational pull. And yet I didn't know how to do all the things that I saw these other moms doing. So I pretended like I did. And, you know, in the sober support group I'm in, they talk about act as if when you first join, like, okay, maybe you don't know how to do this, but act as if you do. And then you can act yourself into right thinking. But that didn't work for me with this. You know, I acted as though I did. I didn't act myself into right thinking. I act myself into the same thinking that I thought I saw reflected, you know, in my peer groups. And, you know, the other piece of that is that looking back and talking to these moms and these families again, everyone was struggling with something. You know, to me, they also all looked perfect, you know, and to me, being the PTA mom meant that no one would worry about me. You know, like how could they wonder if I wasn't X enough because I was the PTA president? Did I say PTA mom? I meant PTA president. But yeah, if I was that, then I was above reproach, right?
Yeah.
No one could question anything about me. If I was married to him, then I was above reproach. If I threw the best dinner party, then I was above reproach. It didn't matter how it got there or what I had to sacrifice in order to do it. So I have to be really careful with that now and really, you know, not overbook myself, like not only have things that fall under the heading of self-care, but have things that fall under the heading of comfort that are
Yeah.
good for me
Yeah.
and not bad for me. It's like there's strategy involved.
There's a lot of work. I say it's high maintenance, but it's
Yes.
better high maintenance than, you know, but it's funny because this is the second part I have from your book.
Oh, tell me.
I might cry. It was me I didn't love, at least not enough. I didn't trust that he'd still love me if I came clean about who I was. So the relationship was doomed from the start, wasn't it? The day I said those words to him, I buried the real Laura, having no idea the price I would pay for that act.
That's it.
And there's something about, I'll be whoever it is you want me to be in order for you to think I'm okay, is what I read from that. And
oh, yeah. Yeah. And I do want to be really clear that there wasn't any specific instruction from my then husband for me to be a certain way.
right.
But, you know, I was sleuthing all the time. I saw
Yeah.
what he admired. You know, he admired these women. He liked the way they did things. He liked this type of parenting. So even though there wasn't like, you should do it this way, I just was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm up to the task. And in all of that, you know, that separation from who I was authentically that started when I was little because it rubbed my stepfather the wrong way. So I, you know, edited out those pieces of myself, compartmentalized them. All of that, I think, was the scaffolding for my addiction. So by the time, you know, I was in this marriage and a new mom and wasn't sleeping, I was ripe, right?
Yes.
I was ready to have something come in and take over because I was so separated from who I was authentically. I did bury the real Laura that day. And, thank goodness she was still alive. I could resuscitate her and dig her back up.
Yes. It's like a little light still burning in there. You
Yeah.
just need to like give it
Yes.
oxygen. And yes. And I felt
Yeah.
the same, like I was never enough for one or too much for another. And so you just
Mhm.
start to chip away at who you are to try to be a chameleon. And we talk about this in, the recovery space. And it's like this chameleon. And that's what I did. And I drank to kind of fit in wherever I went, to be liked by everybody, because I didn't like myself enough to just be me.
I love how many similarities you and I have.
I know.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And I mean, and just even the way you're articulating things to me, it's like ringing all these bells in my head. Like, yes, 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 that was it. That was it. Like, I feel like there was a cartoon character, I can't remember who it is, kept putting his finger up going, aha. Like, that's what I feel like you're talking and I'm going, aha, that's it. That's it,
right.
Hillary.
I remember.
Yes.
Yeah. I know. And that's why I was so excited to talk to you. And I'd love to get, and this is because the book talks about so much, because you're so open and you share so much on social, which I love. If you could say, what is the most transformative moment? Is there one transformative moment in your life?
I don't know if there's one. One is one that I write about in the book, and that's when my older son basically stopped me from drinking some cough medicine that had arrived by mistake after I was sober. And it was one of those things. I mean, if you're listening and you're thinking like people don't drink cough medicine, you're right. One should not drink cough medicine. This was a cough medicine that I actually like to drink, and it's highly narcotic and should be taken with the utmost care, only as really desperately needed. And I liked to get high off of it, so I would drink it, and I hadn't had it for years, and it arrived one night, and my kid was sick. I was home taking care of him, and I ended up having this moment alone with this cough medicine in my closet, which was off my bedroom where my kid was sleeping in my bed. And I was on the ground. I was kneeling, looking at it, just like holding the contours of the bottle in my hand lovingly.
Yeah.
And I was sober, I think, for like 3 months then, 2 or 3 months. And
it's a hard time.
And yeah. And I was in a position where nobody would have really known, and it wasn't Ambien, so maybe it was okay. And my kid just came in, hours later and put his like feverishly hot arms around my waist and said, "I need you, mommy." And that moment, well, actually in that moment, I was like, okay, cough medicine, I'll be right back. I'm going to go put my
back
kid
for you.
But what happened was I ended up staying in bed with my kid. I ended up falling asleep, which was also a weird thing because I was really having a hard time sleeping after getting out of rehab. And then I sent the bottle away with my then ex-husband who had come to check in on our son. And the fact that I sent it away and didn't stash it for later and didn't secretly know that I had a get out of jail free card somewhere in the house, that closing of that back door, I knew then that I had a shot at this. I didn't know if I would stay the distance, but I knew I had a shot. And that was really transformative for me because I walked through the rest of that year with that understanding of hope. Maybe for the first time.
I'm having this moment. Haha.
Yeah.
Because yes, once you do that one time, we do the hard things, and you do that hard thing one time, it's like you get a little bit of strength to say no the next time. But that first time, especially in those 2 to 3 months, is really hard.
Yes.
And I drank cough medicine too.
Did you? See, we're girls, there was one, Hillary, you and I.
There was one time when I was trying to quit drinking. I said, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink any wine. I'm going to have one glass. I'm going to try to control it. And I laid there in the middle of the night, and anybody that's tried to quit drinking or anybody that's tried to just quit on their own, or moderate and just, I'm going to have one, or I'm just going to have a little bit. I'm just burning alive. Like my skin was burning, my soul was burning, everything was just, and I'm like, it was NyQuil. So it wasn't the same, but I was like, I have NyQuil in the bathroom and it's not wine. So I'm just going to go drink that. So I drank the whole bottle to fall asleep. It's not wine, right? Same thing you were saying. You're like, it's not Ambien. I'm like, it's not wine. It's just cough medicine. So it doesn't count, really. And those kind of games that we can play with ourselves to negotiate.
Yeah. I mean, NyQuil has a very high alcohol content. It's like a shot of Jägermeister, really. P.S. It's, if you're alcohol free, you might want to check that bottle of your NyQuil.
Yes. And after, I did this before too. And when I got sober, I did Lister, like I got all the mouthwash out.
Yes.
Vanilla with alcohol, like everything.
Vanilla. Yes.
Because I never wanted to be tempted. Because of that moment, I was like, there could be a chance that I may say it might seem like a good idea. And so I just want to kind of get all that out.
Absolutely.
But again, like I said, I think of you as one of the OG sober sisters, like you, and I love that. Whether it's someone that, a woman that's looking to get sober, or a woman that's navigating a divorce, or a woman that's, thinking about recovery, like anything. But so in the right room, we talk about women navigating transition, because I think as women, we navigate all kinds of transitions into motherhood, when our kids leave for, entrepreneurship, anything, the next phase of life, menopause, like whatever it is, we go through so many things. And so it's to help women navigate these transitions and challenges, no matter what it is they're going through. And so, loaded question. And if you had 3 tips or 3 things that you wish maybe you would have done, or things that you did to navigate any of these transitions that you've gone through, what are your favorite 3 things, or what would you recommend?
I think one of my favorite expressions is feelings are like children. You don't want to put them in the trunk, but they shouldn't be driving the car either.
I love that.
And
I love that.
That I don't have to, my feelings don't need to dictate all my actions. I can have a feeling and I can feel like absolutely X, and that's okay, but I don't have to act on that in that moment. Yes. And that has been super helpful for me. It's just because, Hillary, I'm usually right. I mean, I can see it. I can forecast it. Scott and I, my boyfriend, who is also in the book, who his birthday is today. When we walk down the street, he's looking at every flower, at every tree. That tree's going off, Laura. He'll say things like that. I would never notice that tree or that flower. I'm looking all the way down to see if there's any danger down there, if there's anything we need to be. I'm like 2 blocks down when we're walking, and he's right there in the moment. He's right there, like whatever we're next to, that's where he is. And because of that, I think I'm smarter than him. And I know I'm not. I'm just saying that my mind tells me I'm the one who who's more observant. I'm the one who's going to have a better handle on whatever danger might come our way. I'm the one who is, the one who's going to protect us, and from whatever it is, from a scam, from, I don't know, a spider. That's not me, actually. That would be him. And so I think I'm always right. And so I want to act on that. I want to act on that right away. Somebody says the wrong thing to me, I want to correct them right away. Somebody says, something that is, that sounds ridiculous to me, I want to guide them on how not to do something ridiculous. And I've learned, I have this glitter jar. I don't have it in here. It's filled with glycerin, and then there's glitter at the bottom. Someone gave it to me. I shake it up. It's purple glitter. So the whole jar turns purple. Once I can see clearly through the whole jar, then I can act. So if I'm shook, if I if I have a feeling I'm Jonesy, gotta text them, gotta call them, gotta go see, gotta yell at them, I shake that glitter jar and I wait until I can literally see clearly, and then I can take an action. And yeah, if I don't actually have the glitter jar with me, I imagine that it's with me, and I know about how long it takes to
I was
clear.
going to say, how long does it take?
It takes about 15 minutes to completely
Okay.
clear. Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
I need a whole 24 hours.
Yeah. Well, that is actually my go-to is I wait 24 hours.
I'll
But
write an email and then wait.
yeah, by the time I can see through the glitter jar, I know I need to wait 24 hours. You know what I mean?
You have the clarity to say
Yes,
like, oh, I
yes.
need more time.
I need more time.
I
And
love
so that is my children are like, I mean, feelings are like children. You don't want to put them in the trunk and you don't want them driving the car.
I'm going to use that from now on. I will quote you. I love that. It's funny and true. It's like, it's so good.
It's so true. And then honestly, the other piece of advice I would give would be to, as scary as it is, to be honest, and that honesty can be, I'm not ready to tell you this yet, instead of the lie. The honesty can be, you know, I'm still at home when I want to tell you I've left my house and I'm 10 minutes away. You know, like that's how minute the honesty can be. But it can also be like, I don't have to lie to you. I just don't have, I can tell you that I'm not willing to discuss it now, or that it's not your business. You know, I can risk hurting someone's feeling if they ask me something that I'm not ready to share, instead of saying I feel fine, or, you know, I don't, you know, whatever it is, like whatever false answer I might give them. If someone asked me, like, for instance, if I'm having a really shitty day and someone says, how are you feeling? Instead of lying and saying I feel fine, which is fine too. I know people do it all the time, but I can say, you know what, it's not really a great day, but I don't want to talk about it right now. And that's a revolution for me. It's like to be honest about that if I need to be. But I don't like to tell the truth because I like to manage people's feelings. And sometimes the truth might either hurt their feelings or maybe make them like me less or see me in a different light. So I have been practicing telling the truth, and not like in the way that I'm brutally honest, like that hat is atrocious. It's hideous. You should never have bought that hat.
Do you have a mirror? Yeah.
Right. I don't say stuff like that. I just really try to be honest.
And what I hear when you say that is like, I'm so proud, or like what I see is you protecting boundaries. Like that's a great boundary to say, which is hard for everybody, but I know as an addict, and that's really hard, right? And so for you to say, I don't want to talk about that right now. Like kudos for you for honoring like what you need before everybody else. And I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that. I'm proud of you. That sounds hard, but it's a good, I mean, it's like those small things eventually, you know, especially as add up over time. And then you see those big changes, or see like, okay, I'm proud of who I am, or I like this person versus that person we were drinking, trying to be anybody but ourselves.
And then the third thing is what you just said. Practice makes a practice.
Yes.
Like the more I practice it, I will end up with the practice. I will have a practice of honesty, a practice of integrity, a practice of waiting before so I can respond and not react. Right? Hey, I heard that in the room too. The glitter jar. But it's like all those things that I practice do make a practice eventually. Yeah.
And then they become who we are.
Yes.
Laura, thank you. I love this. Can you share a little bit about where people can find you? I know you're working on a new book. You just had a great New York Times article come out.
Thank you.
What else?
So probably, like, if you're looking for me on social media, I'm basically only on Instagram. I'm at my full name, which nobody ever can pronounce or knows, but it's Laura, Laura, Cathcart, Cathcart, Robbins, Robbins, all one word, at Laura Cathcart Robbins on Instagram. My website is lauracathcartrobbins.com. I think I'm the only Laura Cathcart Robbins in the world. So even if you get part of it right, you will probably find me. On my website, everything lives there. Our podcast, The Only One in the Room, which is now the sister podcast of your podcast, Hillary.
I love that. I know. I
Yes.
was like, I saw that and I was
Yes, we are
the room.
sisters in so many ways.
The room.
But our podcast is on there, all my articles, and thank you for mentioning the Modern Love article. I'm particularly proud of it. Any, appearances that I've done, media and events and classes, it's all there on the website.
Thank you so much for taking time today. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and now I need to find a time to get to LA or have you come to DC.
Yes, girl, you need to come
meet
out
in person.
Are you in DC?
I am.
Okay, we should probably end the
I know. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary.